Welcome everyone, it's Chris Petri. Well, we're having a fun time here. Thank you for coming by. It's so great. We're just going to be zoning in here on some figure work. Everyone likes to look at figures and paintings. Many people will always say, like people that view artwork, people that purchase artwork, people that are artists themselves will usually say, yes, figures look really good in paintings. They actually make paintings look more lively, more fun, more exciting. So that's why let's just practice up on some figure painting here. We'll just try it every once in a while, pick up our brushes, our pencils, our paints, and just kind of have some fun, enjoy the process of just learning a little bit of tidbits of information about it here and there. And before you know it, you've actually compiled a lot of information about figure work, and then you're more confident to just fire those into your paintings, your figures into your paintings, because you've worked with it a number of times. I know myself, I used to shy away from doing figures in my paintings, and I still often don't put figures in paintings. I think I'm just so... most of my years coming up through the ranks as a watercolor artist, a lot of times I just did shy away from putting figures in because they are difficult, but I am working on them more and more, and so you'll see them in more of my paintings probably as we go, but definitely you'll see more videos here on my channel for figure painting, because I just think it's so much fun. It's so exhilarating to paint figures and have fun, and so we're going to do that right now. We'll grab our pencils, our pens, our paints, and we'll be working with our regular Schmincke palette that we have here. So we're going to be using our Schmincke palette, and we have our just standard pencil, a couple brushes, and we'll be ready to go. So let's get started. All right, so we just saw the finished painting, and we're going to get started. First thing we'll do is we'll get our, we'll create our space that we're going to work within, our rectangle, just by doing a couple real simple lines like that, just to kind of, we just alert ourselves to the fact that we do have a rectangle we have to work within, and that's important. That's going to be kind of like our our reference point, our starting point. Okay, we have our rectangle we're going to work within. This is more like a square, probably like an 8" by 8" square. And we're going to do our composition, and then maybe we'll just, I happen to really like squares myself, like the, kind of cube look or the square layout for paintings. I think they look really wonderful. Probably most people will like the more landscaped or portrait style, but in any case, let's kind of stick to some real fundamentals here with our composition, our layout, which is, if we just kind of put that subject matter in one of the four quadrants, we're going to be much better off. So if I was to just simply take some scrap paper here and just mention it this way, if you have a rectangle or a square, and you just make four quadrants onto your paper like that, like pretty much four sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4, let's say. If you place your subject matter when you're going to create any kind of painting or subject matter, if you were to put your subject matter in either one of these four locations, that's going to really look pretty good. If you're going to go up here, I think that's a little more challenging, because then you're going to kind of have that feeling of something floating in your picture frame. So if your picture frame is here, you're going to have to work harder if you put your subject matter up in one of these sections here, because you're going to have to tie it down to your possibly tie it down to your lower section of your composition to kind of make it feel like everything is sort of holding together, or you might want that free floating feeling. It's all up to you. You have to kind of think about these things, but not to get off on a rabbit trail here. I always tend to think that if you're going at your lower left or your lower right, so either here or here, you're pretty safe. You're going to have a good composition. So if you make your main focal point right here, right here, you're really going to be well off. And then if you're going to put them up here, there might be some challenges with that, but you have to work those things out. We'll cover this in other videos too, so I'll get into that. And I also have other videos. If you type in layout, Chris Petri, composition and layout, you'll see that I have covered these type of concerns when you're thinking about laying out your paintings and how you're doing things. But here we're going to kind of just make it more straightforward. We're going to keep our figure here in this painting, this composition, in the lower left-hand corner, basically over here on this side. And then the rest we'll just keep kind of soft, and, you know, maybe we'll do like kind of like a vignette. So with that, we'll just kind of start out and we'll just say, okay, we're going to have our figure here. Let's make the head about here, like that. And then we're going to just going to have a seated figure here. We're going to have a seated figure here. And maybe they're sitting here on the sidewalk along a city street, maybe getting a little bit of a break, a little bit of a rest. And we're going to have we'll have our shoe here. So this person is sitting down. And then we'll have our other leg over here, kind of coming up this way. Like this, maybe. And we'll do that. So we're going to have this figure in a seated position here. And the arms are over here. And there's maybe a duffel bag over here. So we have an interesting duffel bag over here in the bottom corner here, like that. And again, our head is over here. And then we'll make this figure maybe with a, I'll change over my pencil. I have a little bit of, so I'm going to take we're going to do maybe a nice hat here on our figure, like that. So we have the ears there, like that. Maybe a collar. Okay, so we have just a simple figure seated here in shadow. The light is coming from the side this way. We're going to say the light's coming from the right-hand side. I'll make my light insignia here. Light's coming from this direction, basically. And then we look at the hat. We say maybe the hat could be a little larger. And then we might make a center line down for the face, and then we have the nose. Nose is quite tucked under the hat somewhat, so we're going to have the eye sockets under there on the figure. We'll paint some shadows and have a good time with this, and we're not going to be too get too fancy with this. We're just going to keep it very like light, abstract here. We're just we're making a figure here seated, perhaps on a city scene, and maybe there's this figure is sitting down by a monument or something like that. So we're going to do a little monument type thing here. We'll do that, maybe a monument thingy. And then over here, there's some sidewalk or something, and then the monument's up here, and who knows. And there's something else, another bit of stonework up here, and like that. So it's kind of just like that fun atmosphere of maybe going out and sightseeing in a city scene, and this person's just catching a little bit of a rest. They have their duffel bag with them, and they're just catching a bit of a break here, having a seat. And they're along the sidewalk, and there's a monument maybe back here, and then there's maybe some bushes and trees over here. We could do anything we want really to make this scene look fun and interesting, but the main thing is the figure. We want to practice the figure. Let's not get overly anxiety filled with when we're going to do our figures. Let's just have a good time with it, enjoy it. Okay, so already I can see that I tried to squeeze in the legs here a little bit. I tried to squeeze in the legs of this figure, which means I started my figure too low in this scene. So what I'm going to do is just quickly show you how you can remedy this problem. If you find that you've drawn something in, you sketch something in and you say, wow, I can really see it. There's something really off about this, and I can see it myself, that I squeezed the legs in too much. You can erase the bottom line here across the page like that. So you can start new down there. Then I'm just going to lift up my paper like this and then just kind of lift that upwards so that I can get more of this on the screen like so. Okay, so now I'm in better shape here on the camera, on my video. Now I have more room to work with. Now I can take this bottom of the painting here and come right down to like here. Now that gives me a lot more room to work with. And then I can make these legs longer and larger like I wanted to. And so then now the feet are going to come down here like this. Okay, and this leg here needs to be bigger and larger. And I knew I needed to do that, but I just didn't pay attention in the beginning to where my bottom was on my borders here that I made. Okay, so again, don't worry about it. Work through your issues that you have when you're painting and drawing. And I think that's the seat area here, like that. Okay, and then we're not going to worry too much more. We'll have a bit of light on the top of the legs over here. And what I'm going to do is, it's always good to have some mystery in your paintings. You don't have to spell out every single detail. So here, I'm just going to leave it as it is. You'll maybe at the end of this video, you might look at it and say, "Oh, Chris, look, what did he do here? Do I notice that he did anything interesting or odd or out of the ordinary? Or did he paint this straightforward? Did he kind of take some liberties here and there? What did he do?" You'll kind of figure it out as we go. But let's take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll start working on the painting portion. Okay, so we'll be right back. All right, so now we're going to get started with our painting portion. Probably going to start with a good size brush. Maybe a number 10 Escoda travel brush might be good. I might go with a little something a little smaller. Maybe I'll even go with our Skoda, or I should say a Da Vinci number 5 travel brush, which is a synthetic. So that might be good to start with for the face and maybe a little bit of the figure details here. So I'll probably, I noticed I need to empty out my water bucket as I start here. So I start with fresh, clean water. And I'll start out with some flesh tones just for the face. So burnt sienna, cadmium red, and a little bit of yellow ochre. That's a pretty good flesh tone, I think. Maybe a little bit of cerulean blue over here on the right side, just to keep that a little bit separated. But that's a nice shadow color to mix in with the flesh tones as we go for the flesh tones. So let's do that. Let's just kind of, and I will leave a little bit of light on the bridge of the nose here, like that. And so I'll get the Flesh tones in, like that, looking good. Then we'll go with some French ultramarine, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and we'll get our hat here. Maybe even a little bit of ivory black. Here we go. And let's keep working. I like to say this is a kind of a greenish brown sweater. Kind of a nice combination of sap green and burnt umber. And a little bit of French ultramarine blue to make it even a little darker, and I think that looks pretty good. So we will kind of start working in our sweater color here. And I'll just kind of work the colors in here. So far this number 5 Da Vinci brush seems to be working pretty good to get our colors in here. Burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, sap green. I'll paint around the collar. We're going to make that collar like a blue, maybe a blue color, or we'll leave it white. And then as we work these colors, I would say now we can sort of shift over to a damp brush. So I rinse off my brush, dry off a little bit of the water on a tissue or a paper towel, and then I use a damp brush, and then I maybe start to work some of the lighter tones up here. So that's something just to change the tone a little bit of the picture. And we can always work some of that shadowy sweater color. So we have some sleeves there, white sleeves. Maybe the shirt is white. Okay. Then I'll rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit of the water. And I'll just do a little bit of that shadowing along the side here of the head, and then maybe blend it in. And I can add in some more red too. And always remember you could add in some you can add in titanium white to your painting to maybe capture some lights that you might have missed. So for here I have his shirt like that. And a little bit of shadow under here, under the brim of the hat. So we're moving along pretty good here. I think we could just keep working with this brush so far. I think we could just finish the painting out with this. Brown for the jeans, maybe for the pants. So we're going to have some burnt umber, lots of burnt umber for the pants, slacks. And we can mix in a little bit of that green 2, just to give us like a way to transition over from the brown to the green. We can mix, kind of blend these two, together. And then we're going to also have some blue for shadow colors and some purple. So I'll use some purple, ultramarine violet for purple, for shadowing kind of colors there. So that's some shadow colors over here, some cobalt blue maybe too. So I'll mix in those two colors for shadows. And those shadows probably go right on down by the feet here, like that. And then we'll keep working our slacks here, burnt umber, a little bit darker over here. And there might be some other bit of washes we can put up around for some negative shade painting. And then we're going to keep working this wash. It's kind of lighter wash over here. And we'll finish our pants here. Like this, and these are all in shadow. And the same thing over here. We're going to continue with the brown. A touch of the French ultramarine blue, sap green, burnt umber to get a little bit of that darker dark there. And then transition more to the brown. So you can kind of see we're just working our washes here as we go. And we could blend that right in with the shadow. Like that. And then we'll leave some highlight on top of the knee here. Like that. And I think we'll just take a quick break now. It's always good, again, I always mention if you can take a few breaks as you're working. That will sometimes really help. So you can come back and kind of, once you start to come back and get ready to paint again, you'll stop and look at everything and say, oh, I think I need to do this, I need to do that. Maybe I need to work on something other, another section of the painting. Maybe I need to let something dry. So you will sort of start to figure out what you need to do when you come back from a break. So I'll start to just work in some red here. We'll do a red duffel bag over here. All right, so I'm going to leave it there and we'll come back and continue working. I'm just going to blend that in over here like that. And we'll continue to work in a second. I'm just taking a quick break, stretch my legs, and we'll be right back. All right, so we're going to continue on. I just wanted to take a quick break, get some water, and we're going to continue. Let's work on the duffel bag here. So we'll make this a red duffel bag, and let's add different reds here. Why not? Let's make our colors dynamic, not just stick with one red. So I always mention with my videos, and many of you are, you've been working with me a long time, and thank you so much for joining along here over all the years. Many of you, you're always so kind in the comments section, leaving awesome comments and also sharing great insights with everybody that are, a lot of people that are new come in and they read the comments and they learn a lot. So I'm really appreciate everyone that leaves comments and discusses their own way that they do things. And, so many of you that have been with me a long time, I really want to thank you for doing that. That does help all of our other artists that are coming along that are newer. And, but like you probably always hear me say, and if you're brand new here, this is really a really fun thing you can learn about watercolor is if you have like a palette like this, like quite a bit of colors we have here, but not too many. But like if you're going to paint a red like our duffel bag here, why not just, use lots of red here. So we can use cadmium red, we can use alizarin crimson, we can even go in and get some rose madder. We could even get some orange, some cadmium orange too. We could take some straight cadmium orange like that. So we can make a whole conglomeration of different colors to make that wash look really exciting, even though it's just one lump of a duffel bag. We can make it look interesting. And then down at the bottom here, we can get some purple, some ultramarine violet, and put some of that ultramarine violet and maybe some French ultramarine blue at the bottom of the duffel bag. And wow, we've added like 5 or 6 different colors, but some of them are sort of right in the same family, the red and the oranges, and then a little bit of the blue, the cooler colors here. But you can kind of see how that really, it looks better that way. If we, instead of just going with one color, I know I used to do that myself when I first started in watercolors. I would just grab one color and just keep going with it. So I would just say, oh, red duffel bag. And I'd grab a cadmium red and just start painting the whole thing cadmium red. And after a while, I started looking at other artists' paintings, and I'd go, oh, yeah, I can see they're using, like, different colors within their, like, red family. So in the red family, you can use, for this palette, you can use pretty much alizarin crimson, rose madder, cadmium red. You could even add some orange in there, cadmium orange. You can also use burnt sienna. That's pretty much a red. Very, close to the red. And there we have it. We have all those exciting colors. And then we can blend it right into the pants there a little bit so that it kind of all blends nicely. And so then we have and if you want to add a highlight to it, you can always lift up a little bit with some tissue or paper towel. You can lift up a little bit for some light effects. You could even add some water, put some water on like so. Kind of scrub some water on there. Let it sit for a second. And then you take your paper towel again, or your paper, or probably a paper towel works better for lifting up paint off the paper if you want to get a light effect, because paper towel's a little more like it's more abrasive and durable, so that if you really push down on it and give it a twist, it'll really lift up a lot of paint. Like that. So that works pretty good. Tissue is a little softer, so you might not be able to lift as much paint off there, but that gives us a nice little bit of light there. So that's a good thing. And then we're going to add some more French ultramarine blue and ultramarine violet, purple and blue, like that, and we'll get some shadow in here. So we'll try to get some dark in here like this, and then kind of maybe shadow some things like that. And then I like to just do that quick, kind of like splash the paint out this way, and it kind of makes it feel like there's some light effects. I like to do that. That seems to work good. Okay, and we have these over here too, is in shadow. Okay, and then we have some more French ultramarine blue, mineral violet. Oh, that's actually ultramarine violet. Try to get some of that dark in there for the shadows. Shadow there on that side. A bit of the sidewalk there. And all right, I think we are really everything looks good now. I think I will, just before we keep going, let me do a little more of the I'm going to take some titanium white. So this is always a great, titanium white is a great way to capture some lights that you might have missed when you were painting. You might have went over some light areas of white paper you might have wanted to keep in your painting, but you just went over the, you might have painted over an area. I've done that many times. I still do it all the time. I paint over areas I want to keep white paper. But for this here, I've already added some orange paint into the top of my titanium white just to give it a little bit of a warmer color to it, because it tends to be very, very stark white. And what I can do is we can make the nose a little better here. So I'm going to do the light across the cheek here a little bit, like that. And then maybe the nose here. And then if something doesn't look right and you say, oh wow, it's probably not going to look so great, you can lift it up like that. And then it might just be better to let that dry. So I'll just smooth this out a little bit. I would let this dry. I'm going to blend this in like this. So I'm going to blend out that white paper that was and I'm going to let that dry 100%, and then I'm going to add in some shadows, some dark shadows for underneath the nose and underneath the chin a little bit maybe, or underneath the lips, just to give us a little more definition for the face. But I kind of wanted to, and I'll take a little bit of that flesh tone and put that back in like that, just to kind of give us, there we go, better. There we go. Okay, so now let's shift gears and use a larger brush just to get some more interesting colors. And I'll use this large brush here. And I'll just mix up some raw umber, burnt umber, some greens. So basically, I'm just going to try to add in some colors here into the painting. These could be like bushes and things like that. So I'm going to splash a little bit for some bushes and things like this. A little bit of greens here. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this abstract. This is some bushes and trees over here. And then over here, this is the stone A little bit of cerulean blue. Some splashing, rinse off the brush. Then I'm going to check off some water onto a paper towel or tissue and then just sort of blend this in. So this is going to sort of be the stonework over here. And that's kind of a warm stone feel, which is kind of like the earth tones. And I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not going to get too fancy. Maybe a little bit of yellow, maybe introduce a touch of a new color here. And that's all. I'm just going to kind of get that stone feel. Okay, now I think that I can just add some paint, water and paint to the bottom of this, like that. Maybe a little bit of green too. Blend it in there a little bit. All right, I think that is fine. Maybe we'll add some blue. Maybe I'll go back to my smaller brush. A little bit of that cobalt blue might be kind of good here, maybe on some of the shirt. That kind of gives us that little bit of a tie-in with the shirt up here. Like that, maybe a little bit of the blue there, so we kind of feel like that works. And then again, we wanted to just do a little bit of work maybe to the face a little more. Let's do French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, French ultramarine blue, a little bit of raw umber. Let's see if we can get a little bit of shadowing on the face area here. So let's say his nose, the underside of his nose is about there. So if we put a little shadow there, that looks pretty good. And then maybe a touch under the lips here. There. Eyes are under here. So if I can just add a little bit of color there, a little bit of dark, like for the eye socket, the eye socket's there. Just a little bit. It's like a shadow across there. And then we have the underside of the nose. And a bit of maybe a touch of red. Touch of red with a little bit of yellow ochre. Maybe a little bit of red on the nose there, the tip of the nose. That looks good, I think. Yeah, sometimes red on the end of the nose looks really good. Kind of makes it protrude out a little bit. Same thing with the chin. I might have added too much red there on the nose. See, that's where we have to be careful when we're doing this, because if you wet the paper, then it tends to, it definitely tends to be difficult. You almost have to, I think that might be good if we just leave it like that. And this side might be a little more in shadow. A little bit of purple maybe. Okay, that's fine. I think we have plenty of good practice on this figure here. Seated figure. Kind of like a fun seated figure scene. I'm hoping everyone is going to try this and try it a few different times maybe. And we're going to see on the next painting soon. Before you know it, we're doing everything here again. Landscapes, cityscapes, flower paintings, portraits, figure painting like this here. Having fun practicing all of our repertoire that we have in watercolor. Everything is watercolor here on my channel. So great to have you along with us, and we'll see you soon. We'll be practicing up on another session. See you soon. Bye-bye.